Hello, everyone, and welcome to our video about exploring what teacher candidates notice about high-quality mentoring. My name is Matt Wallace.
Hi, I'm Lisa Sullivan.
And I'm Nancy Tseng, and we're all from UC Davis School of Education. We wanted to start off with the following quote as a way of framing this presentation around mentoring practices. So study after study shows that experienced and newly certified teachers alike see clinical experience, i.e. student teaching, as a powerful, sometimes the single most powerful component of teacher preparation. And given the importance of the clinical experience in teacher preparation, the goal of our research was really to focus on high-quality mentoring practices, specifically highlighting the particular practices our teacher candidates identified and noticed during their year-long fieldwork practicum. We wanted to start by sharing background on what we know about the research base on mentor teachers. For our purposes, we are defining mentor teachers as the school-based mentors that our teacher candidates are paired with for their fieldwork. They can also be referred to as resident teachers or cooperating teachers. So first, we know mentor teachers play an influential role in the preparation of teacher candidates, and that the ways in which a mentor teacher guides and supports a student teacher is critical to their success. As we shared in the opening quote, we also know teacher candidates find their time working in classrooms alongside their mentor teacher to be the most beneficial and influential part of their teacher preparation program. And finally, we know the field experience and the time our teacher candidates spend in their placement plays a significant role in shaping their beliefs, their knowledge, and their practices around teaching and learning. Yet while the research is clear about the critical role a mentor plays, there are still differences in how teacher education programs prepare, support, and onboard mentor teachers into doing this critical work. It's also less clear what specific mentoring practices mentor teachers are enacting with their teacher candidates, and it would be useful to have a more specific and nuanced understanding of these practices as a way of supporting and advancing the influential work mentors are doing. And finally, studies do not usually focus on the perspective of teacher candidates. And one of the goals of our research was to center the teacher candidates' perspectives and uncover which specific practices they noticed and found valuable during their clinical experiences.
So from the body of literature on mentoring and mentor teachers, we identified 6 practices that are commonly associated with effective, or what we're calling high-quality mentoring practices. Importantly, these practices are not mutually exclusive. In fact, a mentor or mentor teacher can engage in a number of these practices simultaneously. The first practice, observing and providing constructive feedback, that happens when the mentor teacher collects evidence during an observation and then offers focused and actionable feedback. And when done regularly, that approach supports meaningful growth and development for the student teachers or teacher candidates. The next practice, modeling effective teaching, that's when the mentor teacher demonstrates and shares their reasoning behind their teaching, as well as their non-teaching moves and professional interactions, such as working with administrators, paraeducators, or communicating with families or caregivers. This modeling provides important teaching examples, and it helps bridge the gap between theory and practice for student teachers. The next practice, collaborative planning, that's when the mentor teacher and teacher candidate work together to figure out what to teach and how to teach it. Importantly, this goes well beyond just logistical planning. And when they work together, that is when the mentor teacher and teacher candidate work together, it helps the teacher candidate to become an independent instructional decision maker. The next practice, co-teaching, that's where the mentor teacher and the teacher candidates share instructional responsibilities through a progression from observing all the way to full teacher autonomy. And this allows teacher candidates to develop their own practices rather than simply mimic or reproduce existing methods that they might be watching from their mentor. The next practice, co-analyzing student work, is when the mentor teacher and teacher candidate collaboratively examine student work to learn about students' needs and student strengths, as well as to reflect on and adapt their lessons for the future. And lastly, is self-care, and that's when the mentor teacher supports student teacher or teacher candidates' mental health and well-being, and it's really important to promote resilience and help the teacher candidate successfully transition into the teaching profession. So now we'd like to talk about some of the data that we use for this project. So from a large public university's teacher preparation program, teacher candidates were invited to write a nomination letter for a mentorship award. And this nomination letter did not require many specifics. In fact, it was really open-ended and just asked for the candidates to make a compelling case for why they believe their mentor is deserving of such an award. Importantly, this award or nominations were voluntary, so not every teacher candidate was required or even submitted. And then after these nominations were submitted, there was a group of teacher educators who selected a winner from both the multiple subject and single subject elements of the program.
We pulled our data set from those nomination letters that Matt just described. We had 55 nomination letters from 2022 to 2024. So that's about, they represented 27% of the total program enrollment during that time. We had 28 letters from multiple subject teacher candidates and 27 from single subject. These are the different focus areas in our single subject programs. And the letters represented mentor teachers from 10 different school districts. And there was also representation from 1st to 12th grade. So it was a really nice range of different contexts that our candidates were describing their mentors from. And the analytic approach that we used was to start by collaboratively coding 1 year of letters. And we were really looking at the letters and noticing what candidates were saying and trying to match those comments onto these high quality mentoring practices. So we worked together with 1 year of letters, and then we expanded and individually coded the remaining years. So we had 3 years of letters. And then there were some letters where we, took a sample and double coded. Some letters that we needed were unsure about where to code something, and we double coded those as well. And then we looked across all of that data, the coded data, and came up with themes based on the teacher candidates' descriptions of the mentoring that they were noticing.
So from our analysis, we identified 3 high-quality practices that we referred to most often, and you see those here. The first was observing and providing constructive feedback, and that was represented in 67% of the data. The next was modeling effective teaching, which was reflected in 65% of the data, and then co-teaching, which was found in 60% of the data. No other mentoring practices were represented in more than 40% of the data. We also noticed that with each of these practices you see here, there are some common themes in the data about what our teacher candidates were noticing. So with observing and providing constructive feedback, we notice that TC or teacher candidates most often discuss receiving regular constructive feedback. And that's perhaps best captured by this middle quote here, where they wrote, after each lesson, the mentor teacher and I would meet and discuss what went well and what I could improve.
Modeling effective teaching was the second practice that was mentioned most frequently by teacher candidates. And there were 3 specific themes that emerged from this practice. So the ways their mentor modeled how to build relationships both with and among their students and establish a positive culture. How their mentor teacher collaborated with different stakeholders, including colleagues, administrators, and family caregivers. And finally, the ways that their mentor teacher attended to issues of equity in the classroom and really advocated for students and established inclusive learning environments. And so I'll go ahead and read one of the examples for you here related to collaboration. She collaborates well with her colleagues, whether they're her grade level teammates, the reading resource specialist, or the behavior specialist. My mentor teacher never hesitates to ask others questions in order to maximize her teaching efficiency.
All right, and then the next area was co-teaching, and the themes that arose there were really valuing the input that the candidate was valued and their input was valued by their mentor teacher. Um, Having the candidates feel like a co-teacher as opposed to more of an assistant teacher, and then encouragement that they were receiving from their mentor teacher to try out new things, maybe take risks and innovate. So, in terms of valuing input, the candidate mentioned, or this is one example, my ideas and contributions in the classroom were consistently valued. And then as far as co-teaching, the candidate, whoopsie, mentioned that a student asked, is she your helper? And the mentor teacher responded, she's my co-teacher, and we help each other. And then with innovation, my mentor teacher encouraged me to try new things, even if it altered her typical plans or schedule. So we found it interesting that there was only one reference in all 55 letters to co-analyzing student work, one of the high quality mentoring practices that has been identified. So we talked a lot about that, and we're wondering if it just wasn't something that students wanted to include in their letters. So we're trying to think about what that means, and we'll share a few ideas about how we're using that information with you in a little bit.
So one of the things we think it's important to note is that it's not all clear if the student teachers are writing about these practices because they really valued them, or because they thought the committee who's going to be looking at these nominations valued them. So while we might not be clear on that, it is clear from these letters that these student teachers are noticing a number of different things. One is they're noticing how, when, and what kind of feedback that's being offered. They're also noticing how they're being positioned in the classroom, maybe as a teacher or maybe as an assistant, and how their ideas are being received, whether they're being taken up, respected, or perhaps something else. They're also noticing much more than instruction. So how are the mentors interacting with colleagues? How are they building relationships with others? And they're also noticing ways that our mentors are promoting educational equity in the classroom.
As Lisa shared, we also wanted to offer some ideas of how we think our findings could potentially be used. And so, in terms of mentor teacher trainings, in our program, we have been more explicit about introducing our mentor teachers to these high quality mentoring practices during our initial orientation meetings at the beginning of the year. And another way that we are planning to incorporate these findings is to share these results with our mentor teachers at another upcoming half-day training, as a way of sharing the specific practices that their teacher candidates mentioned most often, and less frequently as well.
Another thing that we're planning to do is include in a course on assessment, kind of understanding what students are learning in the classroom context is to have an assignment where the mentor teacher and candidate look through student work together side by side and make sense of it and try to understand some of the patterns that they're seeing and what it's telling them about what students know and can do, and maybe how that informs instruction. So seeing that maybe analyzing student work wasn't mentioned as often kind of encouraged or inspired us to kind of make sure that that's being done maybe in a more formalized way.
Another thing that I think is particularly important is involves equity. We know from research and survey data throughout the state that student teachers often report feeling unprepared to support their students' needs and to really their diverse student needs, I should say. And here we've identified a space where student teachers really value or notice all the ways they can learn about while promoting an equity agenda. So it might be really important, for example, to make sure that the mentor teachers are really explicitly sharing and talking about the different ways that they might be advocating for equity, because student teachers may not always necessarily notice it because they're not sure what to look for. Maybe they're looking for something else. or maybe something totally different. We don't know, but this might be really important for teacher preparation programs to be thinking about and mindful of to support students to advocate for educational equity. There also might be implications for supervisors as well. So we really think that's important. And we're also thinking that this might have implications for how we're really coming to understand and define high quality mentoring practices. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to engage in some of those discussions with all of you at the poster session at the conference.
Just wrapping up, these are some highlights of what our candidates described as high quality mentoring and how it had a real impact on them. So these we kind of coded as outcomes of mentorship. So I'm not going to read those for the sake of time because our time is up. But thank you so much for listening. And yes, hope to see you at the poster session.
And if you're interested, our contact information is there. Feel free to reach out. We look forward to engaging in conversation.